30
30
seconds.
30 seconds. So we have to look at what happened. If this was a lapse of planning, we have to figure out why that didn't happen. We have to address this like we would any other townwide failure to address discrimination. And I know that sounds weird for a crosswalk, but it really was. It's the law. And I really hope that in making these promises, we look back at what went wrong, because nothing would change without it. Thank you.
So Eric, I want to first say that I too am a Sagittarian. So I know you're great. And I want to tell you that the borough administrator and council president are most definitely looking at what went right, what went wrong, and how do we move on forward from here. I don't want any of my comments to sound like excuses, or I'm sure the other council people feel the same way. We were all affected by this, some of us more affected than others. And this is something that we have to look at so that, climate change is real. And I don't think this is going to be the last of these kinds of storms we'll see every year. We need to be prepared for it. And that's exactly what the council and the borough administrator will be addressing. So thank you.
Mayor, I just want to point out, I see 3 hands and we are supposed to end at 8:32. I'm just letting the speakers know that as much as anything else. Next up is.
So anybody who does not make it by 8:32 can certainly participate in the second public speaking session.
Okay. Next up I see is Ashley. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, this is Ashley Hartwick, and I live on South 2nd Avenue in Highland Park. I also want to discuss the snow removal. And first, I would like to thank Phil George. I saw you personally shoveling the snow, and that was amazing. Thanks very much for doing that. My question is just to add on to Eric. We've had many of our disabled neighbors hurt themselves because of the lack of accessibility. When it comes to enforcement of the residents who didn't shovel those cuts on the corners and also didn't shovel the areas of their sidewalk that were their responsibilities, what can we do for more enforcement of that? Is that the purview of DPW, or is that the Highland Park PD? I'm wondering if that may be one of the sort of easier things to fix if there were more enforcement there. And that's the only question I have on that. Thank you.
Okay, so Terry, do you want to address the enforcement issue?
Yeah, and Ashley, you're alluding to that crossover that I mentioned in my report, where we have these divisions in the government that have to deal with different aspects. And that is generally handled in our offices by the code enforcement office, and it would normally be a property maintenance citation. One of the challenges is issuing the citation doesn't get the corner shoveled in a timely way necessarily. And that's one of those questions we're trying to figure out. Okay, what do we do if after that point, when do we have to, ratchet up our response? And I just want to say, I think you're right. I also think there's some room for communications. Yeah. And we're also thinking about ways to reach some of those corner properties, because some of them may not be aware of that obligation. And I think part of our hesitancy from an enforcement standpoint is we don't want to have the same number of people lining up at Borough Hall upset about citations. So I guess the way I would answer it is, I think you are right. That is a definite way to go, but we want to handle it sensitively and cooperatively with residents, and don't want to just come down like a hammer out of the blue with that. And we want to make sure people are given the opportunity to know what their responsibilities are with respect to not just shoveling it once, but maintaining that access, because that is difficult with the plows running by and so forth. So that is definitely on our list. I've been talking already with the code enforcement. We're talking with Public Works, and certainly the committee and council president
30 seconds.
Going to weigh in on that.
Beautiful. And just to add on one more thing onto that, I was wondering if there is a possibility of a town-led volunteer group, so that Phil George isn't by himself shoveling out there, that there are a number of us who would be happy to take care of that when other people don't or can't or don't know about it. If you think that might be a possibility, I'd love to take part in that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks. All right, let me see where we are. So we have
Hang on
about,
one second, Terry. I saw Phil raised his
oh,
hand.
I'm sorry.
Just very briefly, thank you, Ashley. I want to add that Councilman Hirsch was also out shoveling, and we're not talking about shoveling our sidewalks. We were trying to get some of the more blocked accessible locations, one at Johnson and South Second, and then the really bad intersection, which had no accessibility at the corner of South Fifth and Raritan, which is where they took that fascinatingly flattering photo of me. But that's one of the issues that I said, putting that issue aside, as Terry said, one of the things we have to work on is clarifying our ordinance, maybe revising it to clarify that a little bit better. And of course, people know, those of us like me that have a corner lot know that, we're supposed to do those corners. We try to do those corners. The plows go by and plow them in, just like they plow in everybody's driveway. That all needs to be clarified, and that's one of the things that we hope to have ready. Probably on the front burner, along with the equipment and staffing questions. So thank you for your comments, and we will. I think that needs to be high on the resolution list.
Okay. How are we doing on time?
Mayor, I think we have 2 minutes left and 2 hands. So how do you want to handle it?
So we're not going to answer a question in 2 minutes. So if the folks whose hands are raised, if you could take note of who they are, so when we get to the next public comment session, they would be called on first.
I'm writing them down. Sorry. And I would point out for that, we do have so that we'll try to call on you first when we if you raise your hand again for the second session, I'll look for you in the list. All right. Okay, Mayor, sorry. Just
Thank you.
my situation here.
Okay, we're now on to ordinances requiring a first reading. Clerk, could you please report on introduction of capital ordinance for improvements to South 6th Avenue, South 9th Avenue, North 9th Avenue, Benner Street, and Barnard Street?
Capital ordinance providing for improvements to South 6th Avenue, South 9th Avenue, North 9th Avenue, Benner Street, and Barnard Street in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, appropriating $475,000 to pay the cost, has been duly introduced by the Finance Committee for consideration of passage on first reading by title.
Okay. May I have a motion to adopt or reject and advertise the ordinance on first reading by title?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Councilwoman Canavera?
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster?
Yes.
Councilman George?
Yes.
Councilman Hale?
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Cho-Han?
Yes.
Okay. Clerk, could you please report on introduction of capital ordinance for improvements to North 10th Avenue, South 10th Avenue, Lexington Avenue, Alcazar Avenue, and Aurora Street?
Capital ordinance providing for improvements to North 10th Avenue, South 10th Avenue, Lexington Avenue, Alcazar Avenue, and Aurora Street in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, appropriating $435,225 to pay the cost, has been duly introduced by the Finance Committee for consideration and passage on first reading by title.
Okay, may I have a motion to adopt or reject and advertise the ordinance on first reading by title?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Canavera?
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster?
Yes.
Councilman George?
Yes.
Councilman Hale?
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Cho-Han?
Yes.
All right, we move on to the consent agenda items. May I have a motion to adopt the items 14A through 14E?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Canavera?
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster?
I'm sorry, yes.
Councilman George?
Yes.
Councilman Hale?
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Cho Han?
Yes.
All right, it's now time for the second public discussion session. Each speaker has.
No, you skipped 15.
I'm sorry, what did I skip?
Or resolution requiring a separate reading. 15A.
Well, that's because I don't have it on my sheets. So if somebody would like to read it,
It's a
Mayor,
resolution to adopt amended rules of order for 2021.
okay.
No motion to adopt.
Yes, may I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Canavera?
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster?
Yes.
Councilman George?
Yes.
Councilman Hale?
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Cho Han?
Yes.
Okay, are there any other missing articles?
No. What
No.
happens when you cut and paste?
Is that a no?
That's a no.
Okay. It is now time for the second public discussion session. Each speaker has 3 minutes, but may comment on any topic. The borough clerk will monitor the time and will offer a 10-second warning and then indicate when 3 minutes have lapsed. The session will wrap up by 9 p.m. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand by pressing the *9 on your phone keypad or select the raise hand button on the application. The borough administrator will announce your turn by reading out your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number. Please begin by telling us your first and last name as well as your address. Again, if you would like to speak about a topic, any topic, please press *9 or the raise hand button now.
all right, Mayor, just for the record, we have 22 attendees and 3 hands raised at this point.
Okay, let's go with the first 2 should be.
The only hand that came back up was, it happens to be the first one, was on
Okay.
next for the next session. Michael Greenberg, please state your name and address for the record. You may have to unmute yourself as well.
Michael Greenberg, 124 Montgomery Street in Highland Park. Mayor Brill Mittler, members of Borough Council, borough officials, and citizens of Highland Park. On the Wednesday evening after the storm, over 24 hours after the final snowflake fell, I pulled into a parking spot on North 2nd, got out, being I couldn't access the sidewalk, walked in the street to get to Denison to get back home. And as Ashley mentioned, I was one of the people injured. My foot hit a patch of unplowed snow, my ankle rolled under, and I completely fell. After 7 months of intense rehab from peroneal tendon reattachment, I'm back in a boot and back to square one. The day after, when I had contacted several governmental officials from Highland Park, I got a message. It looked like the plow went down the middle and didn't do anything about the sides. Another excuse I heard at the access meeting was the borough does not own any working snow blowers. Since then, so far, 2 different residents saw Department of Public Works clearing the sidewalks in front of the Department of Public Works building. The storm was no surprise, as some have suggested, as I had been hearing on News Radio 88 for a week prior that we should expect 1 to 2 feet of snow. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990 to provide equitability for citizens who have disabilities. In 2006 and 2009, amendments were passed to hold municipalities to the same standard as private businesses. The continued violations of the ADA by the borough has made the lives of the disabled citizens and elderly of Highland Park a living nightmare. Councilman George and other council members, have you ever read the ADA in any form? If you have not, please research the definition of barrier-free as it pertains to the ADA, and you could see exactly how Highland Park is in violation. Better yet, for the benefit of the entire council and the citizens, here is an excerpt from the law that was provided for me from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. I quote, "Where accessible sidewalks are provided, they must also be usable. A public agency must maintain its walkways in an accessible condition with only isolated or temporary interruptions in accessibility. Part of this maintenance obligation includes reasonable snow removal efforts."
30 seconds.
I'm sure not one person would consider Highland Park's response reasonable. I would like the mayor, the council to address the failures, lies, excuses we've gotten, and specifically an emergency plan for the next few weeks rather than hearing about long-term. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, are there any other hands?
Yes, Mayor. Next up is Charlie Cradoville. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Please state your name and address.
No problem. Charlie Cradoville. I'm from New Brunswick, and I am the Central Jersey organizer with Food and Water Watch. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you're probably aware, we've done a lot of work with community choice aggregation programs. We're able to get successful programs launched here in New Brunswick as well as Piscataway, and in the past 6 months alone, Edison, East Brunswick, South Brunswick, Red Bank, and Collingswood have all passed our model ordinance for a 100% renewable energy aggregation program. And so I'm here tonight following up because I know that this council has been pursuing energy aggregation, and I have a few questions. I hope you can help me. The first question is, has there been any communication with Edison, where I know they are looking to get a program up and running by August 1st? And I know I've communicated with both of the business administrators in your community and in Edison. And so I did want to hear if there was any communication. Second question is if there's any update on Highland Park's first bidding process, which I know was extended by an additional 120 days last I heard. I wanted to find out when that 120-day period comes to an end, or if it already has. And finally, would just ask if Mr. Council President, if you'd be willing to have a meeting at some point in the near future to discuss this stuff further. I know we had a good conversation at one of the Sustainable Highland Park meetings a couple months ago, and I have not been able to attend the most recent meetings, but I did want to circle back and follow up on some of the things I've learned since then, and also just learn anything that's changed on your end since that meeting.
Charlie, I'll let Terry respond to any results. We have had a couple of good conversations. I'll speak to you anytime, whether it's that sustainable or not.
Great.
Terry, can you fill Charlie in on where we are?
Yeah, and for those who are listening who are familiar, this was, the borough did go out to the market to solicit proposals for the renewable government energy aggregation program that was established. We, regarding your, I'm just looking at my notes.
30 seconds.
I have not heard anything from Edison, nor have I reached out, because in truth, I was waiting for that 120-day period to elapse to figure out what our next steps should be. I have been in touch with Sustainable Highland Park along with Council President George to talk about the ordinance in a very general way. But I wanted to see through the existing request for proposals. Mayor, may I continue to answer his? So as to the 120 days, I don't know the answer. I feel like it must be coming pretty soon. If it hasn't passed, I can get back to you if you want to reach out to me. You have my contact. I can look it up. I just don't have it at my fingertips. And as I mentioned to you then, when we spoke last, I think there is some support based on prior conversations for partnering with other municipalities. But as you know, there has to be a lot of agreement on terms, on consultants, so it's not to say we would never do it, but it can be a challenge to kind of get everybody on the same page at the same time. And to the extent that you can help facilitate, I think we are always open for those conversations. That's all I got, Mayor.
Okay. All right, Charlie, I hope you'll get back in touch with Terry to pursue this further.
Sorry.
Okay.
I've got two more hands, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to guess it's Ms. Leving. 4445 is the last four digits. You should be able to just confirm that by stating your name and address.
Hi, Lois Lebbing, North 2nd Avenue again. Boy, I feel like I've died and gone to heaven. I'm hearing about accessibility finally. One more story about the snow removal. I'm not sure why we're reinventing the wheel. Have we lost all our old-time DPW guys? Back in the 70s, I had a boyfriend clean off our sunroom roof and jumped down onto the 30-some inches of snow when he finished. We had 30 inches not too long ago, 5 years or less. And I'm not sure why we have one lane of clearing every street, one lane, and that's it. Who stole our no parking when the road is snow covered signs on North 2nd? Now, seems to me that somebody wants us to use a parking deck in the middle of town. That's what I'm feeling. And P.S., your volunteers, I didn't use them, but my neighbor did, went down the entire list of high school, I guess it is, the volunteers. And toward the bottom, she had hers done. Her daughter asked to have that they go over to the daughter's house 1 block away. And okay, $400 because it's dark now. Of course, the daughter said no thanks. So, yeah, pickaxe works in these intersections. Anybody who's a gardener, you got a pickaxe, goes right through like it's butter, but otherwise the shovels break. I wonder if there isn't some way to reach out to the guys who used to work here and ask, oh, that's right, you might like to know that once the fire hydrant down the dead end of Denison was cleared out the very first day, so that, heaven forbid, there was a need to get to the fire hydrant, a DPW worker filled it in to the very top. You could just see the stick in the very top of the red fire hydrant. So then I took it upon myself, once it was cleared out again, to vandalize the borough's snow, and I sprayed red on each side so that now it's only slightly filled in halfway. The fire hydrant is halfway filled instead of entirely buried. We shouldn't be reinventing. We've had deep snow before. This is nothing new. It was a horrible mess. Okay, different subject. I don't know if the deer shooting has begun. Bow and arrow has begun, as I was told it was going to happen earlier this year. But please note that there is deer netting for sale. As an example, Francis Parker, our neighbors on River Road, they use the deer netting over their beautiful shrubs and all their landscaping, and apparently it works just fine. So please consider that. Thank you.
Okay, just to clarify, Lois, the council has not yet seen the report that the borough administrator is going to be putting together on a comprehensive deer plan, because we've been involved in many, many, many other things since then. So no decisions for anything have been made at this point regarding the deer. Okay, any
Mayor?
other?
May I just address one thing that Ms. Leving said? Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure what the nature of the scope of work was, or what the property was, or what the conditions were, but I am concerned that our list of paid and volunteer snow removal persons offers such exorbitant fees. I would want to better understand that situation.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I'm going to follow up on that.
I was going to do that too. That's the first time I heard that. Most of the other people who spoke to me about the people who came to shovel said they had to force them to take any money. So
right, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And also, neighbors too, helping neighbors out. We saw so much of that too. It's a real community effort. Helping your neighbor shovel their corner, shovel their driveway is patriotic. It is. It just is. And it's for good. It's for the good of humankind. So please consider that too.
Yes, because it does take a village. Council President Phil, did you want to say anything?
No, Mayor, I was
I thought you
pointing
were.
out that Matt had his hand up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else?
Got a couple other hands. We have John Valeri. Please state your name and address again for the record.
Yes, John Valeri, 106 South 6th Avenue. Now, someone had brought up, police accountability in the last session. Me being a lifelong resident of Highland Park, I think police accountability is a big deal, especially since I was harassed by the Highland Park Police Department as a teenager. I will not get into any situations right now, but in terms of looking up records of officers, besides current officers, what about looking up records of officers of the past who have either retired or moved on? Would that also be a possibility?
I don't know exactly what the resolution will wind up saying. The legislation, I should say, will wind up saying, John, and we would have to follow whatever state guidelines we were given.
Yeah, because the thing is that I remember, I understand the whole thing in terms of, law enforcement and the community is all based on perspective and everything. But the fact of the matter that I was only, growing up in Highland Park, I was only able to see maybe 5 or 6 officers, respond well to the community, and the rest of them not respond properly to the community. That right there was a big issue at the time. And the fact that we're tackling it now is a good thing. And I hope it continues. I still remember it like yesterday at the Felton Tot Lot on Felton Street. One of the officers, actually a bunch of officers on 4th of July, grilled hot dogs and burgers for the entire community. In fact, for the entire town. And this is before a national night out. So I wish more of our officers were more as we go forward, are more community friendly, especially watching those YouTube videos of officers playing basketball with neighborhood kids. I'd like to see more of that. I mean, the whole open the door, police department, that's great. The whole community thing, that's great. But let's make sure that we are, I'm not saying we have to be everybody's best friend, but we should still, generate good community relations with the police and the town in general.
Councilwoman Canavera, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, John.
30 seconds.
I just want to let you know, John, that even before I was on the council, the police in this department have played basketball with my 12-year-old son and his friends.
That's good to hear.
I've been very friendly with all of his friends so far. So
that's good to hear, and I hope that continues.
Yes, under our new chief, they're doing a great job. I just want to point that out. They're amazing.
That is definitely a good thing to hear, because like I said, I seriously hope that continues.
Thank you, John. Councilwoman Foster, did you want to say something? Please go ahead.
I want to add to that the new administration and the groups of officers that are in now, one of the things that they stress most on their interview is having community policing engagement. And they had a lot of great ideas that they wanted to implement, but last year was a bit of a snafu with COVID. But they still find opportunities such as to buy gifts or to buy kids pizzas or to find the kids doing something good and reward them in some kind of way. They stop into the teen center and they participate with some of the activities that goes on there. And they're working closer and closer to more community policing engagement and having dialogues and, creating meaningful conversations. So you will see that kind of initiative take place and will continue, especially as we come out of this COVID climate and people are out and about. You'll see more of the block party kind of thing that you spoke about earlier that we used to have. So we're gonna make sure that we have much more community police, not even so much community policing, community and police department engagements. There has to be more conversations and more interaction, more friendly interactions and more meaningful interaction with the community and the PD.
Thank you.
So you'll hear a lot more about that as we move forward.
Okay, Terry, do we have any other hands
I
raised?
see two more. Diane Feldman. Diane, please just state your name and address.
Diane Feldman, 409 North 4th Avenue. At the meeting of the Commission for Universal Access that numerous people talked about, one of the analogies I drew about the curb cuts is that the situation with the curb cuts, in my mind, is analogous to the situation with your own driveway, that you're responsible for shoveling your own driveway to the curb. But if DPW comes and drops some snow at the end of your driveway, you're going to have to move that snow. If you can't catch them, get them to move it any better, you've got to move it so you can get your car in and out of your driveway. And I think that the curb cuts are the same way. You have to look at not just shoveling them, but look at the usability of the curb cuts. In a lot of the discussions, we've been talking about curb cuts in front of private residences or borough property, but I've been looking at some of the main corners on Raritan, and frankly, it took close to a week for Rite Aid to figure out how to shovel out the full curb cut. And so I think that there's an issue with instructing the business district what it means to shovel out a curb cut, because it's not just homeowners, it's everybody who needs to know that. And there was a number of discussions earlier about what I guess we're now calling the town tables. And my question is,
30 seconds.
Is there any responsibility for shoveling around or clearing off the space around the town tables so that people would have a chance of getting back to using them even while the weather's cold?
Terry, do you want to address the shoveling around town tables even now?
I would just say it is on my list to try to figure out what the right protocol. The challenge in part was, given all the other demands on the department, where does that fall on that list of priorities? But I agree that we need to figure that out. It's a new element downtown that I don't think we had quite figured out how to address. Part of the hope with the town tables was there would be some motivation from some of the adjacent businesses to kind of help, but obviously this amount of snow would be a difficult thing to manage. And so that's definitely on my list to figure out, okay, if this stays for the duration, and I believe the council just passed a resolution to continue the tables through the winter. So we need to answer that question more definitively, and that will be done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Diane.
And I must say, Mayor, for the record, Diane shot me a quick email. Could I try to use the term instead of manpower staffing, and I take her point, and I will try to be more inclusive in everything we do. I think there's a lot of force of habit, but I appreciated the gentle reminder and not scolding me publicly for it. But thank you.
Another choice word that I use is people power.
Yes, and I almost said it, and I kind of thought it, and I go, oh, too late now. So anyway.
Councilman Phil George. And
Mayor, I'm sorry, just a minor technicality. We have to have a motion to continue the public discussion after 9 o'clock, and it's 8:58.
We only have one hand at this point.
Okay.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Everybody, yes? Okay. Matt, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to point out it's 9 o'clock, same thing. So.
Okay.
Look at the timekeepers. I've got the what looks to be our final hand for the evening, Jessica Hunson. Please just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jessica Hinston, and I live at 304 Montgomery Street. I just wanted to, I know it's 9, so I'll keep my comments brief, but I just wanted to echo much of the support that was given and the comments that were made in support of the resolution that you'll be discussing during the work agenda, Senate Bill S-2656 and Assembly Bill 5301. But I did also just want to clarify, because I heard a couple of comments during public comment. I just wanted to clarify what this did, and because I think it's really important. This is common sense legislation. Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and 25 other states provide greater access to police disciplinary records. And I think this is really important. And I know there were comments about community engagement and kind of community policing, but this is so foundational because it really allows us to understand better how the internal affairs process is happening. So when someone files a complaint against a police officer, these complaints are investigated through internal affairs. And the results of those, as was discussed in the Mayor's Equity Advisory Council, the results of those investigations are not available to the public, but they're not available to elected officials or lawyers even. And so the only thing that we can see is the summary reports, which show merely the counts of complaints that are sustained. And I thought it would be interesting for the mayor and council to know, but also for the public to know, that if you look at differential treatment complaints from 2014 to 2019 in Middlesex County, there were 161 complaints filed. Not one of those was sustained, not one. And in Highland Park, if you look at the same period of time, not one differential treatment complaint was sustained. So the percentage of complaints that are sustained are 0, and the highest that I've seen is 8%, I believe. And so this is really troubling because you cannot look at what is actually happening in the internal affairs process. So I just wanted to make that point. And I think the other thing that has come up at times is that this bill does protect sensitive personal information. So it expressly exempts the home address,
30 seconds,
home telephone number, work or school address, work telephone number of the law enforcement officer, of the complainant as well. And the final thing that I want to say is that this bill is being supported by a coalition of over 100 groups and individuals, including at least 8 local groups based here in Highland Park. So I look forward to hearing the conversation from the council and also seeing the support of that resolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay.
All right, Mayor, that appears to be our final comment.
All right, then I'm asking the council, do you need to take the 5-minute recess, or shall we just roll right into our work session? Anybody who wants a recess, please raise your hand. Okay, then we're going to take a 5-minute recess. I will see you all back here at 9:07. Thank you. Okay, first item on the work session is resolution in support of Senate Bill 2656, Assembly Bill 5301. Elsie, do you want to take this? It has your initials.
Yes.
Okay.
You heard members from the Equity Commission or the Mayor's Equity Commission that met, and this is something that there's a push for. As they say, there's 26 states that has this on the books, that this record is open and people can have access to it. They don't have to go in and do an Oprah request to this. I think that we wanted was to discuss it with Lucille or Ed's office to make sure that we're in compliance with everything as we go forward, because we have some frequent flyer here in Highland Park. I have one young man that often targets our meeting. This past summer, he was on the hunt looking for me. And I went to Borough Hall, and I had to go in the chief's jeep to get away from him, get in the police car to get away from him. And he spent approximately 2 hours or more with Captain Corbello, and just going over and over and over stuff, and trying to aggravate the situation or trying to create an issue this summer. And he has said repeatedly that when this becomes available, that his goal is to create as much incidents that will go on the captain's record, and that people will question, and that they will be doing inquiries into him, because he will have enough incident and reports on his record, so this could be reviewed, and that would be a part of his permanent record. And that's one of the goals that he has. Chief, are you still on the phone? Because you could add a lot more to this based on the conversation that you had, Corbello had, and the incidents that I ran into. My incident is not important right now, but just for what he was saying about what he's going to do and how he's going to create these records. So everyone's file would be thick, especially Corbello. His file would be really, really thick with all these reports that would be out there. And then when persons look at his record, he would see a whole host of issues. So speak on that, and then I'll speak on other things.
Tara, let the chief speak, and then I'll call on you. Chief?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we've had, this isn't an isolated incident. This individual is not the first person to threaten police officers with these kind of things, especially since the early warning system has come about, where if you have 3 internal affairs complaints lodged against you, it throws a flag that has to be reported to the prosecutor's office. This was one instance where an officer has been threatened. I know the system, I know how it works. I'll keep making complaints on you, whether they're true or not, until you feel it, kind of a thing. It's not just Highland Park. This happens in other agencies, other officers. This happens in, too, as well. It's just one of the concerns of a bill like this, that the Chiefs Association, that the labor laws, things like that, have to take into consideration.
Tara, did you have a question?
My question is, could we reach out to the writers of this bill about maybe some wording for nuisance complaints of this sort? Because I know that the person has reached out to me and has harassed me quite a few times also. So I know he's going to be trouble for our officers.
Right. And this person also was following me around town too. But that's part of the reason, Tara, that we asked that Lucille stay on the call for this, because I think it's important that we have a resolution in support of legislation that makes our police department more transparent, but not at the risk of these kinds of incidents. So is there, Lucille, is there a way that we can address these kinds of situations in legal language that we could share with the writers of this legislation?
Well, that would be my recommendation. The one thing you could do is you could modify the resolution to include that concern. But then I think outreach to the bill sponsors, and the last I checked, I think there are 2 co-sponsors in the Senate, and I believe the Assembly identical companion. Are there 3 now?
There's 3, and they did an update on the 9th.
Okay. The Assembly bill was filed not too long ago. I don't know how many people are on that yet, but I would say that reaching out to them, would also be another option. I think you should definitely modify the resolution so you make clear your concern, which I'm guessing is shared by other communities. You're not the only one that has a frequent flyer who sees an option, to harass or get back at the police or at government, by using the system. So I think they would be open to that.
Yeah. And I want to hear from other council members as well on this. Anybody? Okay, Phil.
I had a couple of questions and a couple of concerns. The Senate bill has some inconsistencies in it, and the purpose of the bill is certainly laudatory, but there are some inconsistencies about disclosure of witness names, proceedings, transcripts, hearings, body-worn cameras, and yet it says that the names of any witnesses or their families should be redacted. But you can't redact it from the hearing. If there's a hearing or a transcript or a body-worn camera, you can't redact that information. So I think that there needs to be some clarification on how that works. One of the concerns that I have also is that when an officer is subject to a fitness for duty exam, it's not because he did anything wrong, but it's classed as a disciplinary action because it can lead to termination, even though you're examining whether that officer's injuries or condition render him fit for duty, and that's not addressed at all. It simply says an officer's medical information is not a government record, but it doesn't deal with the situation when that is the reason. And I was just wondering also if council, when they do examine it, can let us know whether the recent changes to the Attorney General, the Attorney General issued a set of guidelines as to broaden release, and whether that particular aspect has resolved some of the questions in Senate Bill 2656.
So, Lucille.
Mayor, I can answer as to the Attorney General's action. That some of what he's done through rules and regulations and orders has been appealed in the courts, and it's pending. So some of what he's done would address this, but it's on hold right now. I think the point that you raised about the fitness for duty exam, if that's actually considered disciplinary and that would be included in this, that might also be something that you want to point out, because maybe fitness for duty for, medical purposes or whatever. And I assume that that's what they're used for. I'm not totally familiar with that. But if that's the case, maybe that should also be an exception. Like a fitness for duty complaint or whatever, or filing is not considered something that would be accessible under this bill.
I'm sorry, Lucille. My internet went down and I didn't hear what you said. I'm trying to take really good notes.
Oh, I was just saying that I think the attorney, did you hear what I talked about with the Attorney General? His orders?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so the Attorney General has some orders and regs in place that are on appeal right now, and they're pending before the New Jersey Supreme Court regarding the release of some of the information about police discipline. And that's on hold right now until the court rules. Some of that would moot some of what's in this bill. But that ruling, I don't even think the court has heard the arguments yet. So that ruling is still some months away. The point that Council President George raised about the fitness for duty exam being considered a disciplinary action because it could have an impact on the officer's employment. If that's the case, you might want to raise that as an exception that should be included in this legislation. The writers, the bill drafter, and the senators may not be aware of that and may have overlooked it or just may not know about it. And it's something that I would think they wouldn't intend to include in something like this either. So I would say any of these areas where you have concerns or questions or things that you think could be changed, I would embed them in the resolution. And then with a letter, the resolution could go to the sponsors and also to your local senator and assembly people.
So, Lucille or Phil, my question is, what kinds of things fall under fitness for duty? Is it like being overweight, or, I'm confused what a fitness for duty complaint would be.
Go ahead, Lucille. Well, fitness for duty is generally when an officer has a condition and that renders him unable to continue. In the last 5 years in particular, have been a lot of mental health issues. There were a lot of headlines during the opioid crisis for officers who had been injured seriously in the line of work and became addicted to opioids. It may well be that the officer has some kind of particular injury that renders him unfit. Now, a lot of those are resolved through the pension system. If they're eligible for a pension, a lot of times it's not an issue. But there are sometimes, the department has to bring a fitness for duty exam, and it's based upon a medical condition, and yet because it can result in termination without the officer's consent, it is considered a disciplinary action. And while the bill exempts medical records and medical information, much like the present Open Public Records Act does, it's not exempted from the first part of the statute about disciplinary. And that and the inconsistency about the release of witnesses' names, I think, are additions to the bill that would make it a lot more palatable to a lot of people.
So I'm confused now. Doesn't the resolution have an exemption for medical history?
It does.
Yes, the medical information is, but not the disciplinary action, the witness statements, and so on and so forth.
And I have to admit, I don't know enough about the fitness, and maybe the chief has more information on this. I don't know enough about that or how that gets filed or recorded. But if it's recorded as a disciplinary action, I would think that that would be something that wouldn't be released at all, because it's not really within the purview or the intent of this bill.
Right.
That's check on someone's medical fitness for the job is different than complaints because somebody's, harassing residents or, disparately treating individuals with whom they come into contact.
All right, Elsie and then Matt, Elsie and then Hirsch and then Hale.
I would just like to say, Phil pointed out about the disciplinary record and some kind of medical issue. Phil, you took a look at this. Can you just in where you see that highlighted and then send it to me? Because I want to have a conversation with Senator Gill and Senator Weinberg and also Senator Turner, whoever I get a hold of first, but I want to be clear in what I'm asking for them to do.
I'll send that along to you and circulate it to everyone else as well. And again, it may be because I practice in this area and I do quite a lot of it, that the inconsistency about the witnesses and the fact that I think that the legislature intended to make that exception but did not include it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Hirsch and then Hale.
Sorry. Just to be, I mean, so I did want to just note that the bill is relatively concise and does focus on many of the on many of the exceptions that many of the redactions that could occur. And I am seeing though that the that it does protect complainants, family members, or any witness or witness's family member. And so I want to be clear on kind of what we were. I think the kind of repeat offender, kind of chronic, complaint filer is certainly an exception. I don't know how. I honestly I don't know how widespread that is, or if that's a regular thing, or if that's something that is truly going to be an obstacle in kind of in this bill's progression moving forward. It's in a very strange Senate committee, I'll note, and I don't really understand why it was assigned to that committee. It's in the proper committee in the assembly, on the assembly side. But I am seeing though, aside from the kind of chronic complaint filer, I'm not really understanding the other concerns here. And I think it would help to see them kind of written out, and that way we can weigh in, and then we can take anything to the bill sponsors if possible. Because I think I'd rather bring these up with the, I mean, I think, we all have access to the bill sponsors, and I think I would rather address these with them, and certainly with the groups that are advocating for this bill, like the Mayor's Equity Advisory Council. I'd rather have a clean support of a bill where we can address concerns first, rather than make exceptions on what we want to support and what we have concerns about.
Well, it seems to me that I've really only heard one concern so far, unless I'm missing something, but that was with, for lack of a better term, nuisance complaints, or people who are complaining without justification or something, which was what Elsie and the chief were just talking about.
Right.
And I think that seems to be easy enough to overcome with the proper language. I think what Phil was raising was the medical exemption, but I think that it's pretty much covered in
I think it's covered.
Yeah, in the bill itself.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I just didn't want to get bogged down into into kind of the minutia on that. But I do think if we have a legitimate concern about, folks who do file complaints as a form of harassment, then that's something that we need to bring up with the sponsor.
Okay.
So I guess can I go, Mayor, or are you done?
Yeah.
So
I think we lost Phil. Are you still here?
No, I think he fell off.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
So I guess so if police disciplinary records are subject to Oprah, part of that is in responding to Oprah requests. I know that our clerk's office and our attorney's office spend a lot of time and a lot of money responding to those requests, to normal Oprah requests. And obviously they need to do it. Obviously they will spend the money to do it, but it's tens of thousands of dollars, and it's a great deal of time. I guess from a practical standpoint, is that something that the clerk's office would take for the police department, or would the police department have their own counsel and their own clerk preparation for those types of requests? So I logistically, is that something that we would need to know, or should we know? Who's going to actually respond to the Oprah requests that are generated by this, especially if we're worried about nuisance requests, because those are certainly happening in regular Oprah, and if they certainly could happen in this situation. So that's a logistic or practical question that I think we ought to consider. I don't know, is there, I don't know, I just don't know the answer to that, is who's going to pay for that and who's going to,
Well, the paying for it always comes out of
right, but
out of the borough, but the actual execution, I believe the police department has their own clerks.
Okay.
And they would be responsible for pulling the data together. However, we share attorneys.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is, in a normal Oprah proceedings, and I'm assuming that this is sort of just a normal Oprah proceeding, or it just covers police misconduct files within an Oprah proceedings. There is there's an appeal process. If someone makes an appeal and it's in what is presented by the borough, it goes to, and I'm blanking on who it goes to. Does that same appeal process apply in this case? Is there a separate appeal process? Is there a process of oversight of some sort? Is there a county body that looks at this? And I'm just sort of thinking about the mechanics of something about this that I don't quite understand. So
I'll ask Lucille, who was raising her hand, to answer anyway. So go ahead.
Sure. So if this is part of Oprah complaints for denials can go to the Government Records Council, or you also have the option to file directly in the Superior Court. Most people go to the Government Records Council because it's a lot cheaper process, but there are folks that go right to the court. An appeal from a Government Records Council decision can go to the appellate division. So you skip the Superior Court level and you go to the appellate division. So as long as it's in the Oprah law, it'll be subject to the same kind of rules and oversight that you have for Oprah generally. Does that answer your question?
It does on the after the appeal is filed, but the other question I have, and so thank you for that. The other question I have is there a mechanism? It sounds like there is not a mechanism in the bill that might address these nuisance complaints or address these validity complaints. That doesn't exist in the current bill?
I don't believe it does. I think it would have to be spelled out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Lucille, I would also like for you to add that when you take a look at this, because as the much more information that we have to add so we can talk with the sponsors of this bill, I think with the better result we'll have.
So you mean the question of whether or not the nuisance is covered? Yeah, I don't think the nuisance is covered here. I think that the tricky part of that would be who decides if it's a nuisance or what a repeat offender is. And that's where you could wind up with people saying they denied me improperly. I'm going to the Government Records Council. That's, I think, Councilman Hale, what you may be getting at, because you're aware of how people utilize Oprah.
Right.
And, I'll leave it at that.
And with that being said, I would like for it to be noted somewhere that brings us to their attention so they can start looking at that.
Yes, we'll definitely make note of that, and perhaps even suggest where that might be inserted, and also how, I think there would have to be some definition. If something is being excluded, it would have to be defined somewhere in an objective way.
Hirsch?
I do just want to kind of remind everyone, though, that we're talking about public safety and government transparency, and Majority Leader Weinberg is famous for sponsoring legislation that does create more transparency in government, and I don't want to get kind of mired down in the in the weeds on you know, whether or not this bill addresses nuisance complaints doesn't change my support of this bill. And I don't really know how it affects moving forward with a resolution. I mean, with a resolution, I think what we're trying to do is that we're trying to emphasize support for the essence of the bill. It doesn't mean that we're going to enact it locally until it's actually enacted into law, until Governor Murphy actually signs something. So when he signs something, obviously we're going to have to comply, Right. So I don't really understand why. I don't want to re-legislate any, this type of bills. Either we like the bill or we don't.
Well, but it goes beyond that, Matt. Whenever there's legislation, we have the option of letting our legislators know we support this, but we'd like to see this kind of change. That's up to us to do. Because if we didn't do that, the legislators have no clue what we deal with on a daily basis.
I understand. I understand. But this isn't a Highland Park bill. This is a statewide bill, and I think that before,
but we're being asked to support something, and right. Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing in comments is I would be supportive if somehow we could wean out the I don't know what word to use for it, but the people who use it as a weapon,
right?
Kind of like, and we all know, for instance, in our case, and we can only speak to our case because that's all we know of exactly.
Right.
Who these people? I mean, they come to our meetings,
right,
and they harass us.
Right, but I don't know how widespread. But I don't. Let's not lose focus here, because I don't want to focus on the one guy, on the one guy that comes to our meetings, and not the widespread disproportionate treatment of people.
But you also don't want the legislature to pass something thinking we all agree 100% with it, that then has an impact on us that we can't handle.
Right, I understand. But
I mean, we could certainly say, if this council was supportive of this, we could certainly say the mayor and council of Highland Park is generally supportive of this. We ask that you just address this issue. That's all.
Yeah, well, then let's just put that stamp on it and move forward and
we don't have to rewrite the legislation. That's their job, but we have to tell them what we would like to see.
And this is going to go through, appropriations, and it's going to go through legal, and it's going to go through back to OLS, and there's going to be a million people writing amendments to this bill, special interests, advocacy organizations, statewide advocacy organizations, the PBA. I mean, there's going to be so many hands on this bill. If we can just say that we like it.
Generally,
I think we should.
I think the reason why this was brought to you guys is for us to have this discussion. It's important that the discussion is happening. And maybe, Matt, you're in a place where you're in the State House and you know what's going on down there all the time. Not all of us is privy to that information. So the discussion is important.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And to that point, Stephanie, you've had your hand up for at least 10 minutes.
I think we're losing focus on the real purpose behind the bill. The real purpose behind the bill is to show the bad apples in the police department. That's the purpose of the bill, not about who's going to pay for Oprah stuff. And if this person planned on using it as a weapon, I'm sure they have that on video. And then I want to see, okay, he's going to fill his Captain Corbello's jacket up with a whole bunch, and that will be from that one individual. But I want to see the police officers that have harassment from every Black resident in Highland Park and Edison and surrounding towns. That's what I want to see. I think that's what the residents want to see. And that's why we want to support the bill, not of we have nuisance people that use Oprah as a weapon to us. That makes us not even want to communicate with each other via email. And does that stop us? I mean, we continue to do our job and be transparent. I think we're really losing sight of the purpose behind the bill and going on to who's paying and this and that. I think
I agree. It's not our concern.
Right. I agree we have to stay focused on the meat and potatoes of the bill.
But those are still questions we can ask. And I'm not losing focus of what this is. And I'm not, I don't think anybody is losing focus of the idea that that more transparency is a good thing, that we ought to have more transparency. But I do think that we have the need to ask, what does that cost? How does that affect us? And those are questions that Matt might know, but I don't. And I think that's why we need to ask them before we move forward. I think the idea is certainly one that I think we're all behind. We certainly love the idea of transparency, but prior to sort of just saying yes because the beloved Senator Weinberg said yes, we should ask some of the questions and then say yes. That's all I'm saying. That's all the only reason for asking. I don't think we're losing sight of the bigger picture. I think we're just making sure that this is the right way of going about it, and we ought to use our influence to make sure that it is.
And this,
well, this is the reason why this is here, is to percolate this conversation and to have everyone have their input rather than just it's coming out of public safety. We go, yeah, rubber stamp it. This is what this is about, is to have this conversation.
But it went through Equity Commission, right? Correct?
And the Mayor's Equity Council.
Mayor's Equity, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still saying equity.
It's okay.
The Mayor's Equity Council, and I mean, someone had mentioned this, and I'm surprised it's actually in Florida, Texas, and all those southern red states, to be honest, and not here. But I mean, I don't know. I think we should support the bill.
No, we're not saying that we're not going to support. I just wanted us to have a discussion. That's all.
Right. Because to Elsie's point, some of us are very familiar with this and what's been going on, and some of us were not. And
well, we're saying support the bill as is, because I think that's what Matt was saying. That's not to get down and whether, we support it, and we have supported other bills in the past as well too. And when I think the immigration, when we supported it at that time, and what it finalized to be was something very kind of different. So I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. So Elsie, you and I can regroup and talk about this before the next Equity Advisory Council meeting.
And I would also like to get some information from Ed's office as well. But for right now, it seems like, I don't know what it seems like. It seems like we have members that are saying that they have more questions, and we have members saying, let's move it forward.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. And
can you clarify for me exactly what you want from us?
Well, we were talking about the nuisance concern, and that was my biggest concern about this whole thing. The nuisance.
Right. So I don't want us to rewrite the resolution. That's not the legislation. That's not our job. But I think what we need to do is come up with a statement that we can vote on, that may say we agree with, and I'm not putting words into your mouths, but what I'm hearing is if we could say that we agree that it's important to have more transparency in the police departments throughout New Jersey, and we hope that you will also consider addressing some of the, I don't know what to call it. I'm going to ask Lucille to come up with the right kinds of words. The people who file
frequent flyer complainers that just file stuff,
but that don't really have something to complain about, I guess is the idea.
That's what I was asking Lucille, to put some language around that, but that we would attach to it when we send it off.
Yeah. So basically, so let's get something prepared so that we could at the next council meeting. Well, first next council meeting. After we talk about it some more, put something up that could be voted on in support of the resolution, with – hoping that you will address these issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. 2021 budget timeline. Terry.
Sorry, I'm fumbling. My turn to fumble with the mute button. I just wanted to remind everybody it's a new year and we have to go forward and adopt a budget. And I just wanted to lay out the timeline, and we're not anticipating any major deviations from processes we've used in the past. But essentially, to lay it out for you guys tonight, I'm in the process of finalizing kind of the draft budget with Lori, the CFO. My intention is to line up meetings with each of you in your roles as in your bucket area roles to review those sheets, make sure you're kind of generally comfortable. But I'll just be honest, because of we're being fairly conservative minded in light of COVID and some of the hit that our revenues may take in 2021, although that's an area that Lori is going to kind of manage for us. And we'll explain further. We're not anticipating huge deviations except for where we've got some consensus and discussion moving forward. The timeline is basically this internal process of review with myself, the department heads, and the mayor concludes this month. We'll be and you all in your liaison roles, and then we'll be working toward the March 16 council meeting work session to do our annual session on the budget. I would present the kind of the pie charts and slides and things that we've seen in the past, but I'd update them with kind of the current draft. And you would have your copies of the budget well in advance of this meeting. And we would then be on track for what we would need to introduce by April 6th in order to be compliant with the local finance regulations in terms of introduction of the budget. So that would allow a few weeks in between to make any refinements based on the conversation of council at that work session. I'm going to mute the chief because I think that's where the feedback's coming from. I'm going to try that. Then we'd be on track for May 4th adoption. So we'd have and essentially the introduction would happen, and then the public hearing would be at the May 4th meeting. And we could, we'd have some opportunity in between all those steps. So I just wanted to make sure, I'll be honest, I'm a little behind where I thought I'd be at this moment in time, but the good news is I don't think, because of what Lori's done, we'll be in a position to get this out to you guys by the end of the month once I've had a chance to review with the department heads and the liaisons and the mayor. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, but that's just a status report. I didn't want to come out of left field in March, All right, feeling good.
Committee, commission memberships. Each of you, we've been learning, Joan, you're still there, right?
I'm here.
Okay, so we've been learning that council members have not been reporting to us any changes on the individual committees or commissions, resignations, or new additions of people who have not been appointed officially. So on Joan's behalf, I'm asking each of you to get with each of your committee chairs and provide Joan with an up-to-date list of all committee members and any openings that are available. If you think someone's on a committee that has not officially been appointed, they are not on a committee. So if there are people that Joan doesn't recognize, we're going to have to appoint them. So that's, Joan, did you want to add anything to that?
Just in the future, if you know someone is inactive, or if they've moved, they've passed away, like when we did the reorg, and if someone has passed away, and if you know about that when the agenda or something comes out, if you can just let me know. I don't always get all the resignations. I don't always get all the updates. So the information I have, I'm relying on the committee chairs and the council liaisons to let me know. I don't know all of the people that are on these boards and commissions personally, so I rely on you guys to keep me up to date so that I can keep the borough's lists up to date. And I hate, when we're appointing people that have moved or have passed on. So if you could keep me updated, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the most noble work of being a council member is maintaining our boards and commissions. It really is. We have so many volunteers, but they, cycle on and cycle off.
Yes.
And it's hard.
Well, and some of them are there and they've been there and they don't even know that they've never been appointed.
Well, if you provide names to Joan, she'll know.
Yeah.
We can cross-check to see if they were ever appointed.
And Mayor, Joan has provided this too. Sorry, I talked over you, Joan.
We try to do that yearly for the reorg meeting, but it was kind of a little dicey this time, especially with COVID. But, we can make any corrections and we can fix anything, that has been done if people were appointed and they shouldn't have been, or if they should be appointed, we can fix it. I just need to know.
Okay, and Terry, did you have something to add?
I was just saying, and I believe Joan may have already sent this out, but if you would like to see what Joan has on the record, that might be the better way, and bring it to your next meeting and say, hey, is everybody on this list in the room or active? Use that as a starting point. Because I do know from my experience as being a volunteer, we would make those changes and we didn't always let anybody know. It's easy to lose track of that quickly. We know it and then you just forget to communicate it. So the liaisons can really play a helpful role in keeping this accurate.
Yes, and the council liaisons and the chairs of each board have been emailed, but I can resend the emails if I need to.
Tara, do you have a question?
Not a question, just a suggestion. I know I've started emailing everybody who is on the list that Joan sent me to see if they're still on the board, if they're still interested, and I'm compiling a list to give to Joan. So just to make it easier than waiting for each meeting.
I have a Watson Whittlesey on my rec advisory board. Is he still in town? Sorry.
Really, Matt?
Yes, and he's really grumpy. And he's really grumpy about the condition of his monument.
I'll bet you that's right. He is. He's very upset.
I knew the name, but I couldn't place it. And I thank you. I'm like, what is that name? I didn't know that name.
Okay, goals. Anybody have anything they want to add to their goals? Talk about? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn because I'm losing my voice.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.